Hello and welcome coders to the Sky Coding. So from today onwards, we are going to start a new course of Python programming language. There will be a complete series of Python tutorials and this series is having approx hundreds of videos. Okay, we will create a separate videos for each topic so that you can better understand everything and do the practice of these codes and the practicals which we will do without any of the error. Okay, and let me tell you one most important thing about this series. If you are new to Python or you have no knowledge of programming, means before this you haven't learned any of the programming language, then don't worry guys, you can also watch this series if you are a beginner also, because in this series we will cover all of the concepts from the basic level. We will cover all of the concept from the scratch level. Okay, so that everyone can understand this Python language. Okay, and we will cover all of the topics from the beginner level to the advanced level. Okay, so now let's talk that what we will do in the Python. Basically Python is an object oriented programming language where we can create the classes and the objects. Okay, so first of all we will understand some of the core concepts. In the core concepts, what we will learn about list, tuples, variables, literals, and what are identifiers, and all of the basic things of the core Python we will discuss. Okay, in the core Python we will discuss all of the things including file handling, CSV file handling, PSV file handling, all of the file handling, list, tuple, dictionary, and all of the concepts of the Python we will see in the core Python. And after that we will start the OOPS concept. In the OOPS we will see inheritance, constructors, classes, interface, and all those things we will see in the OOPS concepts. Okay, so let's start the core Python first. Okay, so this session is just an introduction of the Python, that what are the topics are in the Python and what is a Python. Okay, and first of all we are going to cover the core Python. Okay, so let's move ahead and let's understand the concepts of the core Python, that what is an core Python. Okay, and what are the concepts of the core Python. Okay, so let's move ahead and let's understand about the chapter 1. Okay, so the chapter 1 is introduction to Python. Okay, all the series will be in chapter 1 2 in the is separated in the chapter 1 2 3, like that way you will get all the series video. Okay, the chapter 1 is introduction to Python, that what is a Python and why the name is Python only. Okay, so it is written here, what is Python. Python is basically an programming language which we basically use to communicate with the machine. Okay, so there is a one high level language and one is a low level language. High level language is a human readable language, means you can just write a code in the high level language, and when you write the code in the high level language, then our interpreter will convert the high level language into the low level language. Low level language is a language which computer understand, means it is in the binary form 010101. Okay, so low language is a machine friendly language, but high level language is a user friendly language. Means suppose that I am writing the code. Okay, so I will write the code in the high level language, but machine will understand that code in the low level language. Okay, there is a compiler and interpreter concept. Okay, so compiler or the interpreter will convert that high level code, means human readable code, into the machine language, that is a low level language. Okay, so it is a general purpose high level language, means it is a basically a programmer friendly high level language. Okay, and talking about the low level language, so low level language is a machine friendly language. Okay, and it is just Python is developed by Guido van Rossum in 1989 and National Research Institute, Netherlands. Okay, so this language is basically developed by Guido van Rossum in 1989 in the National Research Institute of Netherlands. Okay, so this is basically the history, that who developed this language. Okay, and it is publicly available to all of the users is in February 20, 1991. It was developed in 1989, but it was publicly accessible in February 20, 1991. Okay, so why the name Python? Why name is Python only? Why we call this as Python only? Okay, at that time there was a one TV show was going on, as nowadays there are some of the TV serials which are going on in the TV. Okay, so at that time also there was a one TV serial named Monty Flying Python Circus, broadcast by BBC in 1969 to 1974. It was basically a comedy show. It brings a smile on the faces. Okay, so the name taken from this show only, Python. Okay, so this is basically the history of the Python, that who developed Python and why the Python name came. Okay, so this is all about the Python, and now let's understand the features that whenever this language was built by the Guido van Rossum in 1989, that what are the features he has taken from other programming language, because there was already C++, C and Modula and all the programming language was already there. Okay, so whenever Guido van Rossum was developing his language in 1989, so he has taken these some of the features from some other programming languages as well. Okay, so he has taken functional programming from the C language, and he has taken object oriented such as class, constructor and all these from the C++, and he has taken modular programming means Modula, he has taken from Modula 3, and he has taken scripting from Perl and Bash scripting. Okay, so these are the features which Guido van Rossum has taken from some other languages and included those features of some other languages into the Python. Okay, so this is about the features of Python. Okay, and now let's talk about the applications of Python. Okay, because we are going to learn the Python, then why we are learning the Python, where what are the fields where I can use the Python. Okay, so these are basically the applications of the Python. Okay, we can use the Python in the web development, means we can just create any of the website by using this Python. And this is about game development, we can create a game by using the game development. Okay, and we can use this Python as IoT programming, means Internet of Things. Suppose that there is some normal thing and we can just use the Python to connect that with through the internet to make that basic simple thing in the Internet of Things. We can just create, suppose that there is a fan. Okay, so we can just convert that fan into the Internet of Things. Okay, you can just connect that fan with your mobile phone. Okay, whenever you will click the on button in your phone, then your ceiling fan will just start running. Okay, so that's basically Internet of Things. You must be knowing about this Internet of Things. Okay, and we will also, and this we can use Python for the machine learning, we can use the Python for the artificial intelligence. As you must be knowing that there is a one new open AI launch, that is a chat GPT, where you can ask any of the question and it will just give you the solution. Okay, so we use Python in just artificial intelligence and in the network programming and in the database programming as well, because we use a Python. Suppose that we will also discuss about this database programming. Okay, we will just configure our Python with the MySQL database, then we will see that how can we access the data from the database. Okay, suppose that you are running any software, you are running any of the app or website, then you will use basically your database for just storing that website data or game data or any of the app data. Okay, so we can just configure our database with the Python. Okay, so this is also helpful in the database programming. Okay, some of the big companies that use Python are Facebook is using Python, Instagram, Netflix, Stripe, Spotify, Reddit, Uber, Dropbox. These are the big companies which are just using the Python. Okay, so these are the applications of the Python and how many companies are just using this Python. Okay, so now let's move ahead and let's understand about the features of the Python, that what are the features are available to us while working with the Python. Okay, so there are basically eight 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 features of the Python which I have written here. These are basically most important concepts of the features of the Python. Okay, so simple and easy to learn. It is very simple and it is very easy to learn. Everyone, if you are a beginner also, then you can also learn. Okay, you can just take Python as your first programming language as well. Okay, so it is simple and easy to learn, and it is freeware and open source. Freeware means it is free to use, and open source means it's free. Suppose that Python is also an open source, means you don't have to pay any money. You can just simply download and you can work on the Python, and you can just modify the codes of the Python as well, which are already available in the library. Okay, so freeware and open source, and it is basically a platform independent. Okay, so what's the meaning of platform independent? Suppose that you have done a code on any of the your Windows machine, okay, and you want to run that code in some different machine, then also you can run that same code which you have run on your system, and you can just copy that code and you can run that code into some other systems as well. Okay, so it is basically a platform independent. Okay, so you can just take code from one machine and you can just run that code into some other machine as well. Okay, so this is a platform independent. Okay, And another feature is portable. Okay, you can change the suppose that you have created one app for the Windows. Okay, and you want to use that Windows app and you want to convert that Windows app to the Mac OS. Okay, so how can you do that? Okay, so where Python is also supporting that. Okay, you can convert your Windows software app to the Mac OS. Okay, you have suppose that you have done the coding of your any of the app, you have built that app for the Windows, and then you can also convert that Windows app into your Mac OS. Okay, so this is also supporting Python. Okay, and now rich library, it is having a lots of modules, means lots of things which are available to the library, Python library. We will discuss about those things. There is a very important concept, that is Python turtle. Python turtle we use basically in the, suppose that we are working any of the projects. Suppose that I want to draw the art, any of the art. Suppose that I want to print the star, I want to means draw the figure. So this turtle is basically very helpful there. Okay, so there are basically lots of modules which are present. Matplotlib, we have mathsqrt. Suppose that you want to do the square. Okay, so you can just import that math.sqrt function from the library, which is already predefined in the Python. Okay, so that you can use that and you can just import that in your program and you can just use. Okay, so this is about the library. It is having lots of predefined functions already. Okay, and it is also an extensible. Okay, what is the meaning of extensible? Okay, suppose that you have done any of the code in the Python. Okay, and you want to use that code in some any other language. Let's take an example of Java. Okay, suppose that you have done any of the code in the Python and you want to reuse that code. Okay, so you can just reuse that Python code into some other languages. There is some part of code you can use to the Java as well. Okay, and it is an embedded also. Okay, so suppose that there is some code of Java, so that you can, so here embedded means you can just take some part of the code from the Java and you can just embed that code in the Python. Okay, and you can just take some of the code from the Python and you can just embed that code into the Java. Okay, so this is basically extensible and embedded meaning. Okay, and now last one is interpreted. Okay, so the Python is basically an interpreted language. Okay, so now let's discuss about this interpreter and compiler. Okay, because if you are a beginner to Python or any of the other language, so you must be knowing about the compiler and the interpreter, that what is a compiler and what is an interpreter. Okay, so Python is called an interpreted language basically. Okay, and while other languages, suppose that Java, C++ generates the result after the compilation. So these C++ and Java are the compiler based language, but Python is an interpreted language. Okay, so now let's move ahead and let's discuss that what is a compiler and what is interpreter and how they are working. Okay, so we will just discuss this thing. Okay, so this is basically the diagram. Okay, so now let's understand these things, that what is a compiler, then we will discuss about the interpreter, that what is an interpreter. Okay, so basically compiler is a software program that follows the syntax rule of programming language to convert your source code into our machine code. Okay, it cannot fix any of the error. If there is any error present in a program, it cannot fix. Okay, it generates an error message and you have to correct it yourself in the program syntax. Okay, if your written program is correct, means it contains no error, then the compiler will convert your entire source code into the machine code. Okay, and a compiler converts a complete source code into a machine code at once go. Okay, and finally your code will just execute. Okay, so compiler will just take the source code and it will just convert the source code into the machine code and it will generate the output. Okay, in one go only. It will take whole code. Suppose that you have hundreds line of code, so it will just take hundreds line of code and it will means convert that your source code to the machine code in one go. Okay, but while working with the interpreter, it will just execute line by line. We will discuss that thing while seeing the interpreter. Okay, and this is a program. Okay, suppose that this is basically the diagram. Source code will be taken by the compiler, will take the source code and it will just convert into machine code and it will generate the output. Okay, and suppose that you have any program, the compiler will take that program and it will just convert into the machine language and it will show you the output. Okay, and if there is any error in the compiler, so the compiler will just show you the error before converting it to the machine code. Okay, so this is basically about the compiler compiler. Means compiler is just taking the source code and it is just converting the source code which you have written, which programmer has written, and it is just converting that source code into the machine language, machine code. Okay? Machine language means low level language. Okay, and if there is any error, so compiler will just return you the error. Okay, and it will just convert source code to the machine code in one go only. Okay, so this is all about the compiler, that how compiler works. Okay, and this is about the interpreter. Okay, so an interpreter is also a software that translate your source code into the machine code only. Okay, however, an interpreter converts the high level programming language. Suppose that high level means the code which you have written, means which programmer is written, that is an high level language, into machine language. Machine language is low level language. So interpreter will just convert high level language source code into the machine language, that is a low level language, in line by line. Okay, so it will just execute line by line while interpreting and running the program. And let's compare this interpreter with the compiler. So compiler is just taking the source code in one go and it is just converting the source code, whole source code, into the machine code in one go. But interpreter will just take the source code line by line and it will just means convert that into the low level language and it will just generate the output. Okay, suppose that this is your source code which is written in the high level language, and interpreter will take this source code and it will just execute that code into the machine language means low level language, you can call it. Okay, and it will just suppose that it is some looping is there, so it will just again go to this source code and it will just execute. Okay, so this is basically the work of an interpreter. While working with the interpreter, suppose that there are 5 lines of code and there is an some error in the second line. Okay, so it is just executing it will just execute first line and it will show you the error in the second line, because you are having the error in the second line. Okay, because it is just executing line by line. Okay, so this is all about this interpreter, that how interpreter is working. Okay, and if you talk about the Python, okay, so let's move ahead, then we will see, because Python is, you can call Python as an interpreter language. Okay, but if you will see means internally you will see in deep. Okay, so Python is also internally using the compiler as well. Okay, we will discuss that thing later on. Okay, so let's move ahead and let's see some of the differences between compiler and interpreter. Okay, so a compiler translates the entire source code into a single run. Okay, compiler will take all of the source code and it will just convert into the machine language in one go. Okay, and interpreter will just translate the entire source code line by line. Okay, and it consumes less time, that is faster than interpreter, because it is just taking the whole source code and it is just converting whole source code into the machine language. Okay, but here interpreter, it consumes much more time because it is just executing line by line. It is converting one line to the machine language and it is taking one line again. It is just executing line by line. Okay, it is more efficient, it is less efficient. Okay, CPU utilization is more here because it is taking lots of code at one go and it is just executing. Okay, CPU utilization is less here because it is just executing line by line. Okay, so one line is executing, so that's why CPU consumption will be less. Okay, and both syntactic and semantic errors can be checked simultaneously. Okay, whenever you are working with the compiler, then both syntactic, suppose that you have some of the syntax error, okay, and you have some of the code errors. Okay, so both errors will be checked simultaneously while working with the compiler. Okay, so while working with the interpreter, only syntactic errors will be checked. Okay, so the compiler is larger, interpreters are often smaller than the compilers. Okay, it is not flexible, and it is flexible because interpreter is just executing code line by line. Okay, suppose that you have a 5 lines of code and you have error in the 4th line. Okay, so it will just execute first 3 lines and it will show you the error in the 4th line. It will not show you the error for the whole code. Okay, so that's all about this differences between compiler and interpreter. Okay, so now let's talk about that Python. What type of language is Python? Because C, C++, Java, these are the languages which are compiler based language. First, they are just taking all of the code and compiler will just execute. Then it will just run your code. Okay, compiler based language, Java. Okay, and Python, if you talk about the Python, so Python, you can call Python as an interpreter based language. But if you talk about the Python internally, means whenever you are just taking this Python as a program, suppose that you are a very big programmer and you are taking the Python. Okay, so whenever you think internally of the Python, okay, so Python internally is just using the compiler only. Okay, so Python is basically interpreted language, and everyone is just saying, there is basically a common saying that and it is also written in some various books that Python is an interpreted based language. Okay, but the hidden fact is that Python is both compiled as well as interpreted language. Okay, this means that suppose that when we run any of the Python code, okay, it will just first be compiled and then interpreted line by line. Okay, internally it is just using the compiler only, but there is a means whenever you think like a programmer and whenever you will move to internally in deep, you will think, okay, then you will understand that Python is first of all it is just compiling and then it is just converting, means interpreter is just interpreting the code line by line. Okay, the compilation part is mostly you can say hidden from the user. Okay, while running the code, Python generates a bytecode. There is a bytecode concept, bytecode internally, and this bytecode is after that converted using a Python virtual machine. There is a PVM. Okay, as in the Java, while working in the Java you have JVM. Okay, so in the same way in the Python also, this bytecode will be just converted into the PVM, that is a Python virtual machine, to generate the output. Okay, so this is that thing. Okay, whenever you think internally, move internally to the Python. Okay, so Python is also internally using the compiler base. Okay, you can call it as a Python is an both compiled as well as interpreted language. Okay, so this is all about the compiler and interpreter. Okay, if you want to learn more about this compiler and interpreter, then you can just go on web and you can search about these things and you can just understand from there. Okay, if you have any type of doubt. Okay, so this is compiler and interpreter difference. Okay, so let's talk about the flavors of the Python. Basically we have 4 types of flavors of the Python. By default you will be having C Python. Okay, and we will also learn the C Python only. Okay, and there is a J Python, PY, Anaconda Python. Okay, so these are basically the flavors of the Python. Okay, so now let's move ahead and let's compare this Python program code with some of the other languages. Okay, suppose whenever we are working on any of the programming language new, okay, whenever we on new to any of the programming language, then we basically create a one simple program for the hello world, for printing the hello world. Okay, so here what we are doing, this is basically the Java program for printing the hello world. Okay, and this is basically the Python program for hello world. Okay, so in the Python, okay, in the Python what we are doing, in the Python we are just printing print and we are just using this double quotes and we are just writing hello world. So it will just print the hello world. Okay, and it will show you the output hello world. Okay, in the Python. Okay, and let's talk about the Java. So in the Java you have to in the Java everything is in class, means you have to just define the class first, then you have to write the code. In the Java everything is class. Okay, so here you have to just define the class, public class, and this is hello world, this is my class, and this is basically our main method. You have to write, this is basically the syntax of the Java. Okay, and for printing about the hello world, there is a one syntax for sysout. Okay, so system.out.println hello world. Okay, so this is the code, this will just generate the output as the hello world, and this is the Java code for printing the hello world program, and this is a Python code for printing the hello world program. Okay, so and both output will be same. Okay, whenever you execute this Java program, it will also return you the hello world, and whenever you will execute this Python program, then it will also return you the hello world. Okay, so these are the means comparison. Okay, so this is Java program. Okay, in the Java everything is class, so we have to define the class. This is a main method, and this is our system.out.println for printing something. Okay, so this is a hello world. Okay, so in the Java we have to write this much of code for printing the hello world. In the Python we have to write this much. Okay, so this is basically the comparison. Okay, so Python syntax compared to other programming language. Okay, so this is a syntax by comparing it to the Java. Okay, and we will also create a one small video for where we will see that how can you print the hello world in different programming language. We will see for Java, C++, Python, and in there are basically 7-8 types of programming languages we will take, and we will just try to print the hello world in all of the programming language just for fun. Okay, then we will there will be some fun also, then you will better understand this programming language. Okay, so that's all about the comparison of this thing. And now let's move ahead and now let's see the limitations of the Python, that what are the limitations of the Python. Okay, as we have seen the applications of the Python, that we can use the Python in the web development. Okay, and in the web development, in the artificial intelligence, in the machine learning, we have, and the database programming. Okay, we have seen all these applications. Okay, but it has some of the limitations as well. Okay, so the limitation is we cannot create our mobile application by using the Python. Okay, and the performance is not up to the mark of the Python. Okay, because it is an interpreted language, you can call it as, because it is just executing code line by line, and you can call it as. Okay, so that's why performance is not up to the mark of the Python. Okay, and we cannot create the mobile application by using the Python. Okay, so this is all about the some introduction part of the Python, that what is a Python and what are the limitations of the Python, and we have also compared the syntax of the Python. Okay, and you can see flavors of Python we have seen, and we have seen the difference, big difference between compiler and interpreter. Okay, and whenever you will read any book, okay, then you will just see that Python is an interpreted language. Okay, but whenever you will ask to any of the code or any of the programmer, then he will say that Python is a both compiler as well as interpreted language. Okay, and we have seen that how interpreter work, how compiler work. Compiler will just take the source code and it will just convert the source code into machine code in the one go, while working with the interpreter will just execute code line by line. Okay, so these are the features of the Python, these are the applications of the Python, and what features from which languages is taken from. He has just extracted these features from some other languages, he has embedded these features to this Python programming languages. Okay, so these are the things which we have discussed in this session. Okay, so basically this is an introductory part of the Python, that what is Python and what are all these things. And from the next session we will just first of all we will just do the installation of the Python, that how can we install the Python in our system. Then we will start from the basic operators, keywords, literals, identifiers. We will discuss all of the things from the basic. Okay, so that's all for today's session. Bye, take care of yourself guys, and meet you soon in the next very interesting tutorial of the installation of Python. And in that session we will see that how can we install the Python. Okay, so that's all for today, and now we will do the installation of the Python.